involved in the outside, the slopes part of it, the snowmaking part of it.
I ran the racing program there for 20 years.
Rennie Yale had inherited money from Germany, and he couldn't take the money out of Germany. So he used that money to buy ski lifts. Eaton's owned the property. So together they decided to start the ski area that they called Grosstal. So the equipment came over, the hills were cleared, and so it became a ski area.
I skied there right from the beginning. I started skiing there probably in '64, and I was on a racing team there. I belonged to the ski club there. I worked there for initially for Evans Sporting Goods, and then I worked later as a rental shop manager there, and I left before it failed though.
I was a kid that skied there.
Ski-Wing started, I believe, in '58, and it was built by the Eaton family. The Eaton family had a dairy farm down in the valley floor, and they had a lot of land holdings, and from the farm you could see that hill, and they figured that'd make a good ski area, and they got a bunch of investors.
A lot of the people that were in the ski club were people who initially were involved in Grosstal becoming a ski area. We both remember it with good memories. We had a lot of fun. His children grew up skiing there. My children grew up skiing there. We skied there. And the atmosphere was obviously the atmosphere of any ski area. Fun.
Oh yeah, very, very popular at the time.
Yeah, I was on the racing team, and we, a whole group of us, and we ran around. We used to do what's called Chinese downhills. We get to the top of the slope, and we get every kid we knew, we lined up right across the whole face of the slope, take up the entire slope, and then we just go in a dead tuck and go straight down the hill, and basically terrorize anybody who was in our way. Then they had what is referred to as the accident. The chair brakes failed. They went to stop the chair for whatever reason, and the chair started going backwards. And one of the first people was a young kid.
The kid that was killed, the Hendricks boy, he wouldn't have been killed, but the chair's going backwards and it's coming into this area and they're swinging out and they're hitting the walls. And the boy went in, he didn't get up, but he fell down. And he was all right, he'd have been okay.
The chair.
But the chair came along and hit him in the back of the head.
And finally one of the Eatons leaped up and between everything and hit the emergency brake, and that was basically the end of Grosstal.
We lived in a house right across, in the hill right across from the ski area. And you could hear, on our balcony in our bedroom, you could hear people talking in the parking lot. However, I can tell you that night we heard nothing. My husband left for work, I'd say maybe about 5:30 in the morning, all right? It wasn't too long after he had been gone that I heard a car come back up. I went back to bed, I heard a car come up, and I thought he came back to get something he forgot. Well, he didn't come in the house, I didn't think anything of it. That morning, I turned the radio on, and on the radio they said that there had been a murder at Ski-Wing.
I worked there then. I worked there in the ski shop, and every night when I closed the shop, I would take my money bag from my cash drawer and I'd bring it up and I'd give it to Vince DeRosa. He was the general manager there, and Vince would put it in the floor safe. And the safe was in a closet underneath carpet, and it was in reinforced concrete. The thing was secure. That night, whatever reason, I brought my money back home. I never brought my money back home. And went home, went to work the next day, and there's state troopers everywhere.
Steve Bender and Michael Fornes, the two victims in the case, were out grooming the slopes, and their machine broke down and they were fooling around up on the slopes and decided to come down for lunch. And so they drove a snowcat down, and they came back evidently unexpectedly.
When you came around the corner, that window was open, you could see inside of the office. And I firmly believe that they recognized whoever was in there and went in because they felt it was safe, not realizing what was going on.
And entered the office and were encountered by the thieves in the crime in progress. And of course the thieves were armed. Michael, he took it upon himself to subdue one of the guys with a gun. And a struggle ensued. And the way we knew that was because of the angle and direction of the bullet that he was shot with. He had one of the burglars with a gun, and he was struggling, and obviously the burglar was right-handed. But the burglar had the gun up here, and Michael had him by the wrist, and the gun was pointed down, and he was shot right down through at that angle. And during that struggle, realizing he got shot, he turned and ran out the door and down the hallway toward the back of the building. And they shot again at him, and the bullet went right through the wall and missed him. And he, of course, is terribly wounded, runs down to the back door to get out, and the door is chained. And he couldn't go any further. Because of that, of course, that had gone way too far. They executed Steve.
They come in to rob the place, and they definitely robbed it, because they took the safe right out of the floor.
They had to bring the equipment to hammer the concrete away to get the safe out. And they found the safe a couple weeks later. There used to be a bridge to cross the Allegany River in Vandalia, and they found the safe in the middle of the river there. They just chucked it over the side, but you know, to get it out, you had to have specialized equipment. You had to have acetylene, you had to have hammer and chisels. I mean, to get the damn thing out, God, it had to take you, you know, a couple hours, I would think, to get the damn thing out. And you had to know where it was.
Yeah.
Not everybody knew where it was.
The safe had been cut open with a chop saw. A triangular cut had been made in it, and they threw it over what was then the Vandalia Bridge, which was right at the end of the North 9 Mile. Very close. The gun was never recovered that was used in the homicide, or either one that was used in the homicide, and I believe, I always thought that gun was somewhere in that river. The sketches were done by art professionals, I guess, from Batavia, the ID Bureau there, who specialized in collecting evidence and doing photos, although we used to do them all ourselves for the most part anyhow. Once they were published in the paper and distributed, we got a few calls. We didn't get an overwhelming amount of calls, but we got a few calls, but all were dead ends.
I live just down the road. You know, we live probably 2 miles away, and the only time I saw my father sleep with a gun. But it was scary because, you know, they'd never been caught. And I say they because I had to be more than one person just to carry the thing out of there.
My understanding is that they always had a fairly good idea of maybe who was responsible. They could just never prove it. One would think that possibly it could be solved, but I don't know. It's still an open, cold case. It's only been in the last maybe 10 years that everything's been torn down.
As in any case, they're all unique, pretty much. There are no cookie cutter homicides around, because they're all different. But in this particular case, it was really unusual because of the way that it was done. It was unusual for this area because you don't really get that type of a crime in this area, where they chiseled the safe out of the floor. And it was kind of in a closet off to the side, and you had to kind of know where it was. So that led you to believe that somebody had knowledge of where it was in one fashion or another. Believe me, those are never forgotten. But maybe one day we will have that solved.